Hello, and welcome to Booklist Middle Grade Panel. I'm Julia Smith, Senior Editor, Books for Youth at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so that they can follow up with you after the webinar. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Barbara D., author of Violets Are Blue, coming this September from Aladdin, an imprint of Simon & Schuster Children's Publishing. Sharon M. Draper, author of Out of My Heart, coming this September from Caitlin Delawy Books, an imprint of Simon & Schuster Children's Publishing. Kwame Mbalia, editor of Black Boy Joy, 17 Stories Celebrating Black Boyhood, coming this August from Delacorte Books for young readers, an imprint of Random House Children's Books. And Kelly Jones, author of Happily for Now, coming this May from Knopf Books for young readers, an imprint of Random House Children's Books. We'll kick things off by hearing from each author about their new books, and then we'll switch to the discussion portion of this panel. First, we'll hear from Barbara D. Barbara is the author of 12 middle grade novels published by Simon & Schuster, including My Life in the Fish Tank, Maybe He Just Likes You, Everything I Know About You, Halfway Normal, and Star-Crossed. Her books have earned several starred reviews and have been named to many best of lists, including the Washington Post's Best Children's Books, the ALA Notable Children's Books, the ALA Rise of Feminist Book Project list, the NCSS CBC Notable Social Studies Trade Books for young people, and the ALA Rainbow List Top 10. Barbara lives in Westchester County, New York, with her family, including a naughty cat named Luna and a sweet rescue hound named Ripley. Thank you for being here, Barbara. Won't you please tell us about your new book?
Thank you so much, Julia. My next book, Violets Are Blue, which will be published in September, is about a 12-year-old girl named Wren who feels as if she has no control over her life when her dad abruptly leaves the family and announces that he's going to marry another woman. And her mom, who's an ER nurse, decides that the family, which is now just Wren and the mom, need to pick up stakes and relocate. And the way that Wren deals with all of this dislocation and this sense that she has no control is by becoming obsessed with special effects makeup videos on YouTube. There's a whole subculture of people who teach you how to transform yourself into a superhero or an alien or a mermaid. And Wren becomes so obsessed with this and so involved in this whole world, and also so involved in the fact that now she's going to be doing makeup for the middle school production of the musical Wicked, and also her friendship issues, and also the fact that there's a boy who has a crush on her that she does not reciprocate, that she doesn't notice that her mom's behavior is becoming increasingly more erratic. Her mom, the ER nurse, suddenly puts a lock on her door and she disappears for long stretches, and she is always feeling sick, and money is missing from the house, and things start to get out of control in the house and reach a certain crisis point. And eventually Wren realizes that her mom is struggling with an addiction to painkillers. So I think of this book as about two different kinds of addiction, two different kinds of escape mechanisms. One is very creative and healthy, that's Wren's, and the other one is very destructive, that's her mom's. But it's really also mostly a story about family, the way that the mom and the dad and Wren herself learn to accept each other and forgive each other, and also themselves.
Thank you, Barbara. Next, we have Sharon Draper. Sharon is a 3-time New York Times bestselling author and a recipient of the Margaret A. Edwards Honor, honoring her significance and lasting contribution to writing for teens. She has received the Coretta Scott King Award for both Copper Sun and Forged by Fire, and was awarded the Charlotte Huck Award for Stella by Starlight. Her novel, Out of My Mind, has won multiple awards and was a New York Times bestseller for over 3 years. And Blended has also been a New York Times bestseller. She lives in Florida, where she taught high school English for 25 years and was named National Teacher of the Year. Visit her at SharonDraper.com. Thank you for joining us, Sharon. Please tell us about your new book.
I'm delighted to be here, and this is the first official time that I'm allowed to talk about it. So this is just really, really thrilling. I wrote Out of My Mind in 2010, and I've had hundreds, maybe thousands of emails and responses, and it's read in schools all over the country. And the book has been a blessing and a gift to so many people. It's been translated into, last I counted, 25 languages. And it's, so kids in France and Spain and Egypt are reading Out of My Mind. So the biggest question that I get from readers is, so what happens to Melody next? So, when are you going to write a sequel? So, it was a good book. So, what else you got? So, I finally decided to write a sequel to Out of My Mind. And this is the first time that I'm really, really talking about it. And I have honest to goodness chill bumps. I'm not kidding. It's called Out of My Heart, and it will be out in the fall. So, and you're the very first that I get to announce it to. So I'm really, really excited. In Out of My Heart, Melody is a year older. She's 12. And it does not take place in school. We did enough drama to the poor child in the first book. So in the second book, she goes to summer camp. And at summer camp, she is away from home. She doesn't have her parents to help her. She doesn't have her little sister to help her laugh. She doesn't have Mrs. V's guidance and solidity. She doesn't have any of her friends, well, actually, she had no friends at her old school. And that kind of hurt her, that she had people who knew her, but she never really had a friend. So she goes to summer camp. And she meets people, different people. And the camp is for kids with special needs. So she meets people with all kinds of difficulties, things that never even occurred to her. Like, oh, wow, it never occurred to me somebody would have to carry an oxygen tank, that kind of thing. And so she meets people, she learns people, she grows. There's so many adventures that can happen to a young lady in the woods by herself, even though she's surrounded by others. So Melody goes to camp, she learns about herself, and she meets somebody that she likes. And that's all I'm going to say.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent teaser, I have to say. Next, we're going to hear from Kwame Mbalia. Kwame is a husband, father, New York Times bestselling author, and former pharmaceutical metrologist, in that order. His debut middle grade novel, Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky, and the sequel, Tristan Strong Destroys the World, are published by Rick Riordan Presents from Disney Hyperion. A Howard University graduate and a Midwesterner now in North Carolina, he survives on dad jokes and Cheez-Its. Thank you for being here, Kwame.
Thank you for having me. I am super excited to talk about Black Boy Joy, which is the middle grade anthology that I edited that comes out August 3rd. It is, I mean, the concept is all right there in the topic or in the title, in that we are looking for joy. We are interrogating how we individually find joy. And I wanted to center it on Black boyhood and to highlight it. And I always have to make this distinction that centering and highlighting does not mean excluding. These stories are for everyone, and I hope that they will provide inspiration for others out there and how they can find what are their roots to joy. You know, what directions do they take to find joy in their own lives, right? Because it's different for everyone. We have contemporary stories, we have fantasy stories, we have sci-fi stories. You will laugh a lot, you will cry a lot, just basing off my own reactions. All right, I cry very easily. I also laugh very easily. So the extremes are quite dynamic. But you'll also have fun, and I think that's one of the biggest and most important things that I'm starting to realize about this book is that teachers, librarians, and parents will be able to read it, but also more specifically hand it to a child in their life, and that child will be able to have fun reading the 17 stories in this book.
Thank you. And last but certainly not least, we will hear from Kelly Jones. Kelly has worked as a librarian and a bookseller and now turns her talents to fiction. Her first book, Unusual Chickens for the Exceptional Poultry Farmer, was an Indies Introduced pick, an ALA notable book, and SLJ Best Book, and Kirkus Review's Best Book. Her second book is a Regency mystery called Murder, Magic, and What We Wore. You can find her website, curiosityjones.net, or on Twitter @curiosityjones. Thank you for joining us, Kelly. And please tell us about your new book.
Yeah, so I had to think up a new name for myself because it turns out there are a lot of Kelly Joneses on the web. So I have a disambiguation page to say which ones I am. And before I start, Sharon, I wanted to tell you, I am so excited for your book. My uncle has cerebral palsy and has gone to summer camp for years and years of his life. And I can't wait to read Melody's story for that. So sorry to interrupt there, but I couldn't wait to share that. So, yeah, so my next book is Happily for Now. It's about Fiona. She is going to stay with relatives while her mom gets some help with her addiction. And she's also training to become a fairy god person. She is pretty sure that she wants to be the person helping people. She doesn't want to be the person that just waits around for help like some sort of princess. And she's pretty sure that these relatives are going to need a lot of her help too. It turns out, however, that it's a little bit harder than she thought. And maybe the hardest part of all is what happens when she's helped everybody else. And now she has to look at herself and figure out what she needs. And I think about most of my books as being kinds of the parts in between. I actually think about Unusual Chickens as a book about grief. It happens a while after Sophie's grandmother has died, her abuelita. And it's about the parts that we don't always talk about, where there's a big moment and there's a time when everybody comes around you and supports you if you have those people in your life. But there's also the parts in between where you're still worried and you're still not sure what to do and you're still struggling with what comes after those pieces and sometimes waiting for the next shoe to drop, I guess I would say, which is certainly the case with the people that I've known and loved who've struggled with addiction. It's not typically a one-time event. And that's something that I think I wanted to share with kids, but also I wanted to bring some of what Kwame was talking about too, that we can't or I can't, for me and myself, I can't just talk about the hard parts. I have to talk about the parts where we still laugh in between, and we still find joy in unexpected places, and we still meet friends, and we still find things that that we struggle with, sure, but also that make us happy for a minute. And one of the things that I always did when I was asked to give books to kids who were dealing with something really hard in their lives is I would always pick one book also that was a funny book or an escape book, because I wanted to tell kids that it was still okay to laugh and that it was still okay to find joy. And I'm so excited for Kwame's book. But and all of our books, these are all books about what life is like, and it doesn't include just the hard parts ever. So I think that's kind of the heart of what I wanted to talk about in this book, that moment of saying, okay, yes, there have been some hard things in my life, but that doesn't mean I can't help somebody else. That doesn't mean that I don't have any power, that I can't step up and figure out how to do something, or even just take a moment to laugh at something. So that's what I hope came through in this book. We'll see.
Yeah, that was pretty much going to be my first question. So that's fantastic segue, because I did want to talk about, what you hope kids sort of will take away. I know oftentimes I certainly don't really believe in like lessons coming out of books. I think it's more like these little tidbits that can kind of come through, or a certain experience that you can see on the page, or a relationship that's demonstrated or something, so, and I love that you gave kids the paired reading to deal with harder things, and it's sort of like a toolkit that you're like, kind of reflecting an experience, and then like other things they might try to deal with it. And I think that's so wonderful. But yeah, if you all wouldn't mind talking a little more, because I think you all touched on it, but about things you hope kids will draw from this, because I think particularly like coming out of the year we've all just had, books are even more critical, I think, and such a reliable friend to have coming through these times. Barbara?
I write books on what some people call tough topics, but I don't think of my books as issue books at all. I think of my books as not about tough topics, but about real topics. And so one of my books, Maybe He Just Likes You, is about sexual harassment in middle school. My Life in the Fish Tank is about a family dealing with the oldest kid's mental illness. Star-Crossed is about sexual orientation. Everything I Know About You is about a kid who has a classmate with an eating disorder. Halfway Normal is about a kid returning to school after 2 years away for cancer treatment. These are real things that kids go through, but I never want to write a book that's heavy or depressing or one note. So my books have different layers and levels to them. I tried to write characters who seem like real kids. They are not spunky. They're not perfect. They're not unilaterally likable necessarily. They can be, they can be difficult. They can be grumpy sometimes, or silly, or wrongheaded, as they're trying to navigate their way in the world. But I use a lot of humor, and I think in Violets Are Blue, there's a lot of fun in the fact that this is a girl who's discovering the world of special effects makeup. It's different, and it's surprising, and a lot of kids get into the superhero / alien / mermaid angle. So I think a book about a serious topic can be entertaining. And in fact, for the middle grade reader, should be entertaining, even as it's exploring a tough topic, because middle grade readers need a break, I think, from the tough topic, as opposed to YA, which can focus exclusively on that difficult thing. Middle grade readers need a varied experience, I think. So even in one book, you can have fun stuff despite the serious topic.
Mhm. Yeah. Let me add to that. I agree. I think it's real important when we think about what young people have gone through the past year. Um, they were at home taking care of their two baby sisters. They were trying to do homework online and making sure that their sixth grade brother did his homework online. They're fixing dinner. The children of this generation are different, and they're stronger, and they're also, they've been hurt. You know, they've lost things. They've lost people, in many cases. They've lost connection. They lost, last year's kids missed senior prom. They missed graduation. They missed, so there's a lot that children are missing. And the only thing that we as authors can do is to give them books to read. First, we have to convince them that a book is something you can actually read and do, and you can turn off the television and do that. And that, but they need what we have to offer. They need joy. I want that book. Which reminds me, how can we get each other's books? Because my grandson is 12 and he needs that book like yesterday. And so at the end, Julia, tell us how we can get each other's books. It's important. But anyway, I want to think about what these children have been through the last year, and how writers of books and givers of words can give to them and give to their teachers who have struggled mightily. Teachers have balanced their own children's learning while they've got a 3-year-old over here and a 5-year-old over here, and they're trying to teach sixth grade online at the same time, and only half the kids connect. It's been hard on all of them. So I want books to be gifts for them, something that they can read over the summer and relax and enjoy and rejuvenate, so that perhaps in the fall we can go back to something that maybe looks something like normal. Hopefully, breathe, deep sigh. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, and I will piggyback on the piggyback that was just concluded, just to say that for me, reading has always been an escape, right? Reading, and yes, I read from an early age. I read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy just to really escape. But reading has always been, me doing a Saved by the Bell, Time Out, the world stops, I'm in this book, nothing else is happening. And I want to pass that experience on, right? Nothing gets me amped up like when a reader is like, I read this, in 1 or 2 or 3 sittings. I just, and they're, they tweet at you, or they send you email, or if there's a student, they send you, a folded over handmade construction paper card, and it says, Mr. Mbalia, I stayed up late, and, or a parent will be like, hey, I just want to let you know, my son, my daughter, my child, I caught them reading your book underneath the blanket with a flashlight. And I'm like, that's right. Yes, exactly. That's what I want to happen. I want more of that. Yeah, I hope you didn't have to tell me to discipline them or anything. I want more of that. I want readers to take the joy of reading from all of our books, right? And the brief escape that these books can provide, I want to give that to them. If we can give that to them, then I will consider our jobs as writers and as authors successful.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally understand. I totally agree, Kwame. I also, when I have hard times in my life, I read to escape. And the books that I have found in those times, I will always be grateful for. And the books that failed me, that kicked me out partway through, or that didn't hold up, and that's me as a reader. I don't have the same taste as everybody, but those books I feel like failed me. And so that's actually the standard that I hold myself to when I write, is I want this to be a book that somebody else could escape into.
Mhm.
Because one of the things that we learned this past year is that escape is a really valuable thing, especially when you don't have anywhere else to go. And that's always been true for the kids that we write for, right? They can't get in the car and go wherever they want. That's not an option for them. So if we
Yeah,
value
a book.
that, yeah, right,
Yeah,
it's
I was just gonna say a book is like an extra room in the house, right?
right,
With a door.
right.
Like you're stuck with however many siblings, and your parents, your parents are getting on your nerves because they keep telling you to do stuff. You keep they're walking outside the door. It's 6 a.m. They're vacuuming, and it's just like, please, I don't have anywhere else to go. A book is like that extra den or room in your house that you can just slip into for a
Yeah.
brief moment of time and lose yourself reading, and then you come out, and it's like you had a brief little vacation, and that's really the best feeling.
Yeah, and it's also sometimes a separate room inside your own head, which can be the hardest place to live in, right? That's honestly, when I was getting nervous about this panel, I went and read for a little bit. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna have a little breather here. That was really helpful. So I think sometimes in normal times we forget how valuable escaping is, and it really makes me happy to hear you talk about kids having that escape, because when I was talking about when I give kids a book that says it's okay to laugh when they're experiencing something hard, that's because I understand in myself that I need people to remind me that that's okay, because in the moment it doesn't feel okay, and kids don't have that life experience to know that that it's an entire experience of life. It's even when something terrible happens, you still have the full range of your toolbox available to you, and it's something we all need reminding of, I think. So excited for more books in the world that do that reminding.
Yes, absolutely. Have events or characters from your childhoods made their way into your books? Or have you like put in things that you wish you had in a book when you were a kid?
I'll
Yeah.
start there. I had probably the most perfect childhood that a child could have. I I had a mommy and a daddy and a sister and a brother and a dog and a cat. My school was in walking distance. I lived next door to a nunnery, learned a lot just by watching the nuns. I even put them in one of my books. I thought they didn't have feet. I thought they could float because I couldn't see their feet, and they floated. They moved so smoothly. But they made friends with me, and we used to talk across the fence. But my childhood, I think, writer, because I was a reader. I lived maybe half a block from the local library. So I lived at the local library. I read. We only had 3 TV stations. I'm old, okay? So and there was not a whole lot to watch on television. So I went to the library, and my mother encouraged it and trusted me to go to the library. I went every other day and checked out. I think the limit was 10 books. I'd come home with 10 books. every other day. And I read them all. Literally, I read all the books on the elementary side of the library until they had to give me a special pass to check out books on the adult side because I had just read them all. So my early life was involved with reading and learning. And I was so lucky to live in a home where learning and reading was nurtured and was encouraged. And good grades were kind of like required, but and so I grew up in that kind of home. So as I got older and I started to see different things in the world and travel and go places and discover that not everybody had grown up in that little house with my mother, who expected perfection from all of us. Two out of three did okay. So, but I think an author's early life has a lot to do with the literature that comes out. And I did not know that I was going to be a writer. I did not know that my childhood was going to be the background for writing. I did not know that things I learned in 7th grade I would need as an adult as a writer. But I'm very grateful for that I had the nurturing of many, many adults who saw me and saw potential in me. So when I am with children, and hopefully we'll be able to be with children at one time soon, but when I'm at a school back in the good old days where we could go in schools and we could be in the auditorium and we could cheer and everybody could breathe on each other, I used to enjoy the interaction with young people because they got to see somebody who remembered what it was like to be a kid and who remembered what it was like to need books, or who reminded them that, hey, it's okay if you don't like books, but just try this one, just one book, and then see what you think. And then get back with me and I can give you something else. So I've always been a part of that teaching and learning. And I give thanks for the learning that I had, because I don't think you can be a good teacher and work with learners unless you had good teachers and learned how to learn and how to teach and how to share. So all of my writing is all mixed up with that.
I was the kind of kid who would read while I was brushing my teeth. My mom was always saying, "Stop reading, you're reading too much. Go out and play." But I was a very introverted kid who lived for books. And I wrote my first book when I was 5, and I share it with kids when I meet with them. It was about a kid who had a robot. When kids ask this question, I always tell them that I write fiction, not autobiography. So I don't just transcribe events from my own life, but there are certain things that I call emotional memories of how I felt when I was in 7th grade that I draw on. And I try to write the books that I needed when I was in 7th grade, because there weren't books like this. So I wrote Star-Crossed because I had a crush on one of my friends who was a girl. I wrote Maybe He Dislikes You because I remembered what it felt like when I was walking in the halls in middle school and all of a sudden boys were groping us. I wrote Violets Are Blue because I remember feeling like the creative kids were the ones on stage, the extroverted kids, and I was a very introverted kid, but I felt like I was creative too, although it wasn't recognized. It was a weird kind of creativity. And all of these emotional memories that I had, I try to write for kids now, because I don't think there's a difference really in the emotional content from how I felt when I was in 7th grade and how kids feel now. I think we can share a universal language, even if some of the signposts have changed.
That is I love the way that you phrase that, because I want to take that and apply it to how I write, science fiction and fantasy for children, because we're writing, theoretically completely different worlds and completely different people and technology and interactions, but we take those, what you call emotional memories or those signposts, and what I call touch points, or hooks for readers to ground them into the story. So they can, readers will give authors the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, yes, all right, this is completely different world that this boy fell into through the sky. All right, that totally makes sense, right? But they'll begin to lose interest, or you'll lose them if you don't provide them with something that they can sort of relate to, right? And so for me, for example, just totally out the blue, I don't know why this popped up. It's totally not something that stays at the forefront of my mind. But when a child touches a thermostat, right? It's like in an immediate, everyone knows, like, why are you touching the thermostat? You don't pay the bills in this house, all right? We keep the thermostat at 68 so that we can keep that electric bill down. If you're cold, put on a sweater, right? Transcribing that for children of a different generation in a book that's sci-fi, go put on that thermal suit. Why are you touching the spaceship's heat controls, right? Like, you don't pay the spaceship fuel bill, get out of here. And immediately, the children understand the significance of what has happened there, right? And so similarly, I don't put events from my life, because those are events that center around my personal interactions, and so they might not translate well to a different reader. But the feelings, the sensation, the knowledge of going through something similar, I think is important to put in. When you get into the car after it's been sitting in the sun for too long, and you touch the seat belt, and it's that it's too hot. Everyone has gone through that. All right. Well, sticking to when you're bouncing in the old yellow school bus, and you get up after an hour-long trip to school because you live way out and you're getting bussed into school, and you stand up and your skin like peels away from the seat because it's so hot. People understand that sensation, right? They might not have completely gone through that same scenario, but the feeling, they understand what you're trying to convey to them. And that's what I tried to put, those sensations, those emotional memories, as Barbara said, into the book.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm feeling that seat peel off right now. Got a little bit of skin crawling there. That worked. But yeah, I think people are really complicated. I don't, even the people in my life for years and years, I'm not sure that I know them well enough to take that entire person and put it into one of my stories. I have to be able, it's almost like acting. I have to be able to inhabit that character while I'm writing it well enough to understand where they're coming from and what decisions they're making and all of those pieces. And so, yeah, that's a challenge. I definitely agree with those emotional memories and those moments. They work that way for me too. And some of them are really unexpected. I don't know if you've all had this happen, but where something comes up like that seat peeling off, and you think, oh yes, that goes there. Oh yes, I remember that. And you haven't thought about it for years, but all of a sudden it's right there. And yeah, in Happily for Now, which is coming out in May, it's not a person, but my hometown turned up in a bigger way than I expected. I grew up in a very quirky California small town. We got our first stoplights after I moved out and went to college, and they had a big festival and a parade through the one street. And some of the things in that parade definitely would have happened in my parade in the hometown. You had to look out for the people that were throwing the candy so hard that they would hit you in the head, and the people who just were eating it instead of throwing it, and like where you got your position, so things like that. But also things that surprised me by not being universal. One of the questions I get a lot about Unusual Chickens is why Sophie writes letters to her grandmother who has died. And I kind of thought everybody did that. Turns out not, but that was something that I did after my granddad died, and that I still do to some degree with people who've passed to, because I feel like they would want to know what's going on, and I have things that I really want to tell them, and I don't expect them to write back, but it doesn't stop me from writing. And so that turns out to be a thing that was just a connection in a different way, I guess. There's a few people who've told me, oh yeah, I do that too, but it's not as universal as I thought. So sometimes that's a surprise also.
Yeah. Okay, I don't need to get like very personal here, but I am curious because I was shocked to find out that most people hate middle school, because I loved middle school, and I have found out that I am in like very much the minority here, and I'm just kind of curious. I love middle grade books. Middle school is my favorite, which I think was in large part because it was a tiny middle school, and I had gone through like elementary school with these same people. So it was very much like I'd known them my whole life, kind of, and we were a class of 16, that kind of thing. So it took away a lot of the issues, like nobody really had a crush on anybody because we'd known each other forever. And we weren't big enough to have cliques, and you couldn't have bullies. And so it like just took out so many of the variables that do surface a lot of the time at that age. But I am wondering sort of like how the middle school experience did impact you as you're writing, sort of your drive to write these stories for kids this age. And I guess it does also extend to ones who are younger, who haven't quite hit middle school yet too.
I'll start with that. I don't really remember my middle school years. I mean, they kind of blurred all together. And back when I went to school, middle school wasn't really a separate thing. You just, finished elementary school and then you went to junior high. But I taught middle school for like 9,476 years. And so I know middle school kids really, really well. Middle school kids are the best ones to teach because they're so full of life and expectation, and they're just past childhood. So they've thrown away their Barbie dolls, but they keep them in the closet just in case. But they're not ready to go out and dress like a Barbie or be a Barbie for real. They're just in that middle, and it's the perfect age to teach. They're yearning to learn, to experiment, to find out who they are and what they are. They play with friendships and with each other, and nothing is really serious because they can't drive. And so it's the perfect age to be, 12, 13, 14, figuring it out. By the time you're 15, you know everything. Truly, I know 15-year-olds, they know all of it. They have learned, they have reached the zenith of existence because they're 15. But 11, 12, and 13 are just wonderful, wonderful ages because they're still figuring it out. So that's the age I like to write for and write to, is that group of kids that are still on the brink of figuring out what adulthood is going to be. Right now, it's like, okay, I'm not a kid. I've thrown away my Barbies. Actually, in the latest book, I have a girl who has tossed away her Barbies because I'm too old for that now. And how she has to find something else to fill her time because she's, I sadly have given up my Barbies. But that age of exploration, of discovery, of figuring out, oh, that's a boy. Oh, I feel a little bit different about that. Oh, I didn't used to feel, a boy used to just be the kid that bumped me in the hall. Now, if he bumps me in the hall, what does that mean? So I love this age. And that's the age that I have been writing for lately, and that's the age that Melody is in this book. She's gotten to the point where she has questions to ask. And yes, I love mom and I love dad, but oh, who is that down the hall? What is that? What does this mean? And how do I deal with this particular aspect of my life right now? It's a wonderful, wonderful age. I like teaching them. I like writing for them, and I like writing about them. So that's what's coming in out of my heart, sort of, without telling anything at all.
Yeah, it's middle school. Yeah, it's middle school is a experience because everything for you thought you were at the top of the food chain when you were in 5th grade. Like at 5th grade, you ran the elementary school halls. You had known the teacher, you knew the teachers long enough, they knew you. There was a certain respect level that happened there, right? Like, hey, Mrs. Johnson, I got this. Yeah, I watch the 3rd graders. Don't worry about it. There will be no water splashing at the fountain while I'm here. I got it, Miss Johnson. You go ahead to the teacher's lounge. It's fine. 5th grade, you ran things, right? And then 6th grade happens and everything changes, right? You're at the bottom of the food chain. Your body decides to stop listening to you and does whatever it wants. Why is that there? And your heart is doing even weirder things. What's going on, right? Stop. And you're realizing that the world is bigger than you, your friends, in your house, right? The concept of where you live and your surroundings and your environment is suddenly shoved outwards, right? And you've got to deal with all of this new information and process it along with all these physical changes. And it's just a lot, right? It is a lot. I give middle grade students so much benefit of the doubt, so much cushion, because they are dealing with so much. They're going through so many changes. Writing for them, like my own middle school experience was okay at best, ridiculous at worst, right? Those days have been shoved inside of a lockbox and compartmentalized deep inside internal Kwame, right? We don't unlock those. We don't unlock those before 5 p.m. On the weekend, because those have been sent there for a reason. But still, that age, as Sharon has said, that age is so fun to write for and to talk with. You're just sitting down. When I do school visits, I have decided, like, listen, the first 5 minutes, I'll do a reading from whatever book I'm currently talking about, and then we're going to do Q&A, because Q&A with middle grade students, it's hilarious. It's fun. It can get absolutely bonkers, and yet they ask some of the smartest, most insightful questions about being a writer, about being a person. So writing for that group, it's like I'm not reliving my own middle school days, but I do feel like I'm helping someone else's middle school experience, be just that much better, because they are already dealing with too much. I want to take stuff off their plate. I don't want to put more onto it.
And I think that, on the one hand, as we were talking about before, the emotional truths are the same as they were for us when we were that age. On the other hand, kids now are plugged in. They are bombarded with so much information. They know exactly what's going on in the world in a way that we didn't, I think, when we were 12 or 13. And I think a lot of the information that they're getting causes anxiety when they feel as if they can't discuss it. So they're aware of, for example, climate change. My next book, After Violets Are Blue, is about a kid who has eco-anxiety. She's anxious about climate change in the world. A lot of kids are obsessed with issues like that, and they feel that they can't talk about them because grown-ups are uncomfortable. The kids aren't uncomfortable necessarily, but the grown-ups in their lives are uncomfortable engaging them in conversations, sometimes because the grown-ups don't know what to say. So I think if you give kids a book about a topic that they're already very focused on,
Mhm.
and allow them to have conversations about it, it's less threatening for everybody, because kids aren't necessarily pointing their fingers at their classmates or their friends and saying, like, why are you acting like that? They can talk about characters in a book, and people don't feel threatened because these are characters that we're all thinking about, we're all observing. And it's a great way for kids in the middle school years, I think, to explore some of these more challenging topics that they're already aware of and they're already feeling anxious about.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kids, it depends so much on the kids and their community and their life experiences and everything else. I would say there's definitely things that kids were struggling with. And I'm not saying at all, Barbara, that you're saying that, kids didn't used to have issues. Of course, kids have always had issues. But I think that the greater awareness of that can be both a comfort for people who know that they're not alone struggling with those things. And it also can be really overwhelming sometimes. Yeah. And, they're right to be concerned. These are big deals. I don't know how to fix them. I don't know how to tell a kid how to fix them. If I did, I wouldn't be doing this. I'd be just fixing things. And that's, I guess that's partly why this was my first contemporary realistic book, which I never thought I would write ever. But there's no magic wand for addiction. There's not, believe me, I would love it if there was, and I'm never going to write a book that tells a kid that there is. I think that the awareness that there are things that adults have no idea how to fix really hits around that time. I think that it's that those moments of change, you've all kind of talked about this. Those are the moments where we grow, but those are also, any moment where we grow is super uncomfortable, right? We don't grow if we're comfortable. That's not how it works. And so it's both need more help dealing with that, and also are learning that they can't necessarily find that help from the people that they've always looked to it for it before. And that's a really hard place to be in. And also even the approach is different. I was thinking when you were talking, Kwame, about the Q&A with kids. Yes, I mean, kids want to be heard, and they want to know that you are hearing them, and they want to be able to hear what each other are saying. One of my favorite workshop exercises with that age is we write a letter from a protagonist stating their goal, and then you pass it to the person to your left, and you write the antagonist's reply to that person's letter. And it's all about thwarting that person. Let me tell you, middle schoolers excel at thwarting. They never get a chance to thwart. They're really good at it, but they have so much energy, so many ideas, so many things that they would like to do, and so little control over what they feel they can affect. And that's a huge piece of this, is I don't know how to reconcile that in my own life. And I sure don't know how to tell kids how to do that, but it's still valuable to know that you're not the only one struggling with this, that you're not the only one who is feeling this way. I think that's a huge piece of what I can help in a tiny way with. And yeah, I had a mixed middle grade experience. I had parts of it were really good, and parts of it were really uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I love the points you all made. And I think it's great, Kelly, in your book, that at points they sort of equate a fairy god person with just like a helper, just like boils down to a helper in real life. And I think that's wonderful. And there are like the finding joy is magical, and like all of these things that do exist in real life. So thank you so much. Let me check the clock. We are running very close to time. I did want to ask, and if we don't have specific answers right now, that's okay. We can follow up in the email that will go out. But I am wondering if any of you all are doing school or library visits for these books you have coming out. Yeah.
Okay, I am available for Zoom or Zoom-ish visits to anybody who wants me. Just, go to my website and you can find me. I have my first in-person visit scheduled for 2022, and I'm so excited. So, because that school says we are going to be ready by 2022. So I've got one ready to go, and I'm sure that things will open up slowly as the year progresses, that we will be able to do that. So I think we're all tired of being at home and looking at ourselves and our families, and that we would very much like to go out and in a safe way, be in a place where other people are. And I think we're coming close to that time. So if anybody is interested, I am available. Just check my website. It's SharonDraper.com, and let's figure it out.
Yeah, same for me. KwameMbalia.com. I'm currently doing virtual visits. If you're nearby and you want me to stand on your lawn to shout through the classroom windows for those students who are in school, I'll do that for free, just because they deserve that, and I like hearing myself shout. Otherwise, yeah, it's virtual visits, and you can just find it going to KwameMbalia.com on my website.
Yep, same. It's curiosityjones.com. Or sorry, .net. Even I don't know my own website. curiosityjones.net.
And I'm barbaradbooks.com. And I'm doing lots of Zoom visits these days, and I would love not to do lots of Zoom visits. I would love to do in-person visits, and I hope that, by the fall, that's what we'll be doing. Hope.
All right. Thank you all so much. This has been so interesting and insightful talking to you all. As a reminder, tomorrow all attendees will receive a follow-up email with links to the title list and today's video recording. And that's all we have for today. So one more big thank you to our sponsors, Simon & Schuster Children's Publishing and Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's panel.
Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.